If you follow me on Twitter, you know what I'm doing this week. What, you don't follow me on Twitter? Fail. It's Megan with College Uncomplicated, and today I volunteered at South by Southwest EDU. Pretty much because I'm too poor or cheap or whatever to buy a badge myself. But for those of you who don't know what South by Southwest is, it's basically a week-and-a-half long festival held in Austin that goes over music, it goes over film, interactive, and then South by Southwest EDU is actually a younger kind of extension of that conference that's 4 days long, and it happens before the actual South by Southwest. We bring together traditional educators, edtech entrepreneurs, and students just to talk about what's going on in education right now and where its future is headed. And before I get started on anything, I should probably say that my opinions right now have nothing to do with South by Southwest. This is me, not South by, so yeah. So because obviously I do this channel and I'm very interested in equal access to education, particularly higher education, obviously South by Southwest EDU was the place to be. I got to hear some really great panelists today. Obviously I was volunteering, so I couldn't really go exactly where I wanted to go, but I still heard some really great things that's going on in education. Particularly this project called Go Baby Go through the University of Delaware. They're actually using cars, like little Disney cars that you can buy from Toys R Us or something like that, you know, kids ride in. They're able to make modifications to those in order to help disabled children, you know, really young disabled children, actually become mobile. And they showed some super awesome videos of these kids who had like never moved on their own, sitting in these little cars, and they were able to move, and you could see how like excited they were, and it was just really awesome. I really enjoyed that. I think that's a really cool project, and if you want to check it out a little bit more, I'll put a link in the description to an article that they shared during the panel. So another panel that I saw was actually a group of government officials, teachers, and nonprofits. It was a panel. They were all from the Ohio area, and they were talking about how they were using their expertise in order to fight the summer slide. What happens to students, you know, when they end school and then they go through summer without learning anything, and how the retention of that knowledge basically slides. The idea that they really focused on that I thought was really interesting was that education is a community effort, that teachers aren't solely the educators in a community, that it needs to be carried on throughout a student's life, like not just specifically in the classroom. So they were talking about different ways that they engaged parents and libraries or you know, summer programs in order to carry education throughout, you know, the entire year. The most notable person, or the most notable panelist that I came across, was Diane Ravitch, and boy did she have a lot to say, and I loved it. At first when I was, you know, volunteering, everybody was like, Diane Ravitch, Diane Ravitch, Diane Ravitch, and I was just like, who is this lady? So for those of you who don't know, like I didn't, you know, a few hours ago, Diane Ravitch is a research professor of education at New York University and a historian of education. So she's written like a cajillion articles on education history and education reform, and this super awesome book that I'm super embarrassed to say that I haven't read or did not hear about before today, called The Reign of Error: The Hoax of the Privatization Movement and the Danger to America's Public Schools. Be aware, I haven't read this book, but this is my reaction to what she said in her speech. So I'm going to give you a quote so you can just get an idea of her perspective.
I believe that there are three great principles that are the foundation of our American democracy, and that we can't afford to lose any one of them. The first is our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And these documents obviously are the definition of our government, our rights, our freedoms. The second is our free market economy, which allows and encourages entrepreneurialism, innovation, but it must be buffeted, it must be buttressed, it must be moderated by a strong social safety net to protect the general welfare A free market system needs a strong safety net so that the powerful few do not crush the weak, and so that those who don't succeed in the marketplace are not left to starve to death in the gutter. And a free market without a strong safety net would be a harsh and brutal existence. So I think both of those things are part of our democracy. The third institution that defines our democracy is free public education, with doors open to all.
Preach, Diane! Preach! I cannot express how nice it is to hear somebody say that. This clearly shows her ideas of the educational industrial complex, and it sheds light on her feelings about edtech companies and how she believes that they take advantage of educational opportunities in order to make a quick buck without really changing anything. And she really got me thinking about what I wanted to do with this channel, College Uncomplicated, and the idea that I feel like this information should be free, that I don't want to put a price tag on it because I don't think it's fair to say people who can afford this can have this information and therefore be more successful or more prepared for college. I feel like this should be open access. And I don't want to become an edtech person later on who is just trying to make a quick buck off of somebody else's disadvantage. But while I agreed with a lot that she said, I do have a problem because I feel like she didn't provide a concrete solution for these problems. For instance, she stated that we needed smaller classrooms in order for students to get the individual help that they needed. But as a private citizen, how do we go about doing that? Like, yes, obviously, we know that. But in the midst of a recession, how can we convince policymakers to make something like that happen? With those comments that she made about edtech companies or Teach for America, I feel like it's too sweeping a statement. Because there are people out there just like me, specifically, I'm not a teacher, who genuinely want to make a change in education and not simply exploit it. I mean, these are good ways to create supplementary education that can help educators. And by no means do I think it should replace it at all. How we implement some sort of screening process for that, I have no idea. No. One person brought up a really good note that I wanted to talk about. I totally see where he's coming from because obviously poverty is an immense systemic problem that it's just everything in our entire society is affecting it, and in order to reform that or to get that changed, you would have to change so much for that to happen. There are people who need help right now, but I can't help but think that if we have that mindset, we're solely attacking the symptoms of a problem and not the actual problem. And like Diane said, students or parents aren't going to give a crap about education, especially higher ed with tuition prices rising, if they can't put food on the table, if they can't, pay their bills because they're bankrupt from healthcare costs. Like, you can't expect people to drop everything solely for education when they're fighting to survive. If we don't look at that issue, we will always be trying to fix these symptoms. We won't be attacking what is really causing it. And those aren't going to change until we have significant reform. I could go off about her speech for the rest of the night, but I'm going to cut it off there. So if you want to keep track of what I'm doing at South by Southwest EDU, make sure to follow me on Twitter at College Uncomp. You can also like me on Facebook, College Uncomplicated, or subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you have any questions or have any other ideas about Diane's speech or anything that happened on the first day of South by Southwest EDU, I would totally love to hear it. Hope you have a good night, get some rest for tomorrow, and I'll see you later. Peace!